Time now for the game preview presented by Ticketmaster here with head coach Kevin Stefanski. Kevin, you guys are coming off a tough loss, but what's the mindset on the field as you're preparing for week 3? What's the takeaway after you've watched that tape?
I think every game, win, lose, or draw, you have to learn from it. It's more painful after a loss, obviously, but there are so many things we can learn from. And our goal is just to keep getting better throughout this season. So disappointed in our result to the previous Sunday, but what we have to do is learn from that. And I think the guys have the right mindset of we have to go on the road versus an AFC opponent and find a way to win.
Down the stretch of that game, you guys had some opportunities there. You guys showed fight. How important is that in particular when you're preparing to bounce back off the loss and go into week 4?
Without a doubt, and I think the big thing, like you mentioned, those opportunities, we have to capitalize on those opportunities. And that's this game of the NFL. The margins are razor thin at times, so when the opportunities present themselves, we have to capitalize on them.
Are you turning the page, heading to the West Coast, taking on the Las Vegas Raiders? When you're studying them, how do you anticipate Antonio Pierce and the Raiders preparing for you guys?
Well, it's a really good football team, and I think if you look up and down their roster, they have a ton of talent. On that offensive side, those skill players get your attention with Davante Adams. They have tight ends in the first round that can really get you. They have speed outside, and Gardner Minshew, we've seen him play last season. He can really ball out in these games. So he's a guy that we have a ton of respect for. Defensively, obviously Max Crosby, he's an elite rusher. It really starts with him up front. They added Christian Wilkins, who's an outstanding player up front. And then they do a really nice job defensively with Patrick Graham as their coordinator. They really try to keep you on your toes. They can really bring pressure at any moment. They can drop into max defense at any moment and have 8 in the drop. So really makes you work. And then if you look at their special teams, they have 2 really good specialists. Their punter and kicker go up against anybody's punter and kicker. So we're going to really have our work cut out for us versus a good team.
We'll go into the specifics in a moment, but they're coming off a tough loss of their own. How much does momentum really weigh into this? You guys are trying to bounce back. They're also trying to bounce back. Does that play into the game plan and how you approach things?
We really go into every week like we're the most desperate team. Doesn't really matter the results prior. We have to do anything we need to do. It's a fight, scratch, and claw mentality.
Talking about battling and fighting things out, we know that is one of the traits of Gardner Minshew. So knowing that he is capable of pulling things out and maybe surprising you at times, how do you try to contain him and contain those explosive plays that you might not see coming?
He's a challenge because the ball can come out really quick. He can also play off schedule. So he plays a style, some people will call him a gunslinger. What that means to me is he can play on schedule and off schedule. And when you're covering your guy, you have to be ready to cover him early and late. So again, going back to seeing him firsthand, he's a guy that really can make plays throughout the game.
Now, you guys are coming off of a tough matchup against Malik Neighbors, who had a big game. How do you contain a guy like Davante Adams, who you know can make plays and he will be a prominent part of their offense?
Yeah, it's really up to the entire defense. It's all 11 when it comes to stopping their offense. And when you mentioned Davante Adams, we have a ton of respect for him. He's a very savvy route runner. He can do a lot of things in his routes, post routes, rack. He has a ton of ability really lined up all over the formation, so we're going to have to really communicate and make sure that's an all-11 type of thing, trying to slow him down.
A guy like Brock Bowers, a rookie tight end who has been really good for them early on. What does that game plan look like as a defense trying to make sure he doesn't get going?
Yeah, very good player. Obviously, we know a lot about him from studying him in the draft process. Again, it goes back to playing sound defense. It's not one person's job to take him away, but he's big, he's physical, he runs like a wide receiver, and he can block, obviously, like a tight end.
On their defensive front, obviously your offensive line took a hit with Wyatt Teller going on IR. Zach Zinter posed for a potentially bigger role. What does the offensive line look like heading into this week, preparing for guys like you mentioned, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins?
The guys are working really hard, and like you mentioned, Zach, he came in relief duty in this last game for Wyatt, and I thought he performed well. So we'll let the offensive line shake out by the end of the week, understanding who is available to us due to health. But we feel good about the plan that we have.
Now, their run defense is among the lower in the league. Does that kind of set you up to get that run game going a little earlier and maybe stick with it a little longer?
Yeah, we want an efficient run game, and certainly when there's opportunities to be explosive, we'll take it. They're on tape. Obviously, we need to do our part in our strain and our finish and understanding what we're trying to attack, but there seem to be opportunities to have an efficient run game.
Talked about the check downs and how 2 high safeties might pose a threat against those big explosive plays. Do you see that from them? Is that something that maybe you could get going? And have you felt comfortable getting that going through the first 3 weeks?
Without a doubt. And I think, again, I have a ton of respect for Patrick Graham and what they do defensively. So they do mix their coverage. They'll play some two high. They will play some one high. We need to get into these games and understand what the plan is for that specific day and then adjust accordingly.
All right. I feel like we don't talk about special teams enough, right? You talked about them. Daniel Carlson, A.J. Cole, those two guys, what does that do for a team when they've got that special teams unit that's so strong?
Well, they're extremely talented at their specialists, like you mentioned. Then they have good players. They have good returners. They have good core players. We feel strong about our guys as well. So it's a great matchup, but understanding that with their field goal unit, they really are in range once they cross that 50-yard line because Daniel Carlson does have a big leg.
First of a 3-game road stretch, how important is it to start this off on a high note?
Yeah, we understand what it takes to win on the road. You have to play sound football. You can't beat yourself. So we've gone on the road once so far this season. It's time to go on the road again and just play our best brand of football.
All right, safe travels and good luck on Sunday, Coach.
Thanks, Cam.